You're not on the guest list, ma'am. That one sentence rewrote the last 10 years of my life. The words didn't hit like a slap. They landed softer, like the cold realization that the room has moved on without you. I blinked at the young man in a pressed black suit, holding a tablet and a professional smile, standing squarely between me and the small sea of crystal glasses and designer dresses beyond the archway. "This is Naomi Hale," I said, quieter than I intended. "I'm the bride's sister." He tilted the tablet. "I understand, but I don't see your name registered for tonight's dinner." Of course he didn't. I reached into my clutch and unfolded the slip of thick ivory cardstock. It wasn't formal. No wax seal, no RSVP barcode. Just Tessa's name, the date, and a time scribbled in cursive by someone who clearly didn't think I'd keep it. My friend Mia handed me this. She said she was working the event. I smiled, lips dry. "Can you just check again?" He didn't glance back at the screen. "I'm sorry, I have no record of you." Behind him, the restaurant glowed in warm tones, candlelight flickering off champagne flutes, hydrangea centerpieces spaced with perfect symmetry. A violinist tuned her strings near the fireplace, preparing for the kind of ambiance that makes people feel exclusive. My name wasn't on any of the calligraphy place cards arranged beside a sculpture of peonies and pearls. Evelyn appeared from the side hallway like she always did, unannounced, in soft mauve silk, with a voice that slid between polished and parental. "Naomi," she said, with that half smile she reserved for strangers she needed something from. "I thought you understood. Tessa needed the focus tonight." She leaned in, adjusting the cuff of my sleeve like a gesture of affection. "It wasn't. It never was. This dinner is mostly for Greg's side of the family, her fiancé's network. Big donors, press folks. We just didn't want confusion." I held her gaze. "You mean you didn't want them to see me?" She gave a small, breathy laugh, like I'd made an awkward joke. "You know we didn't print your name, but your presence is understood. That's what matters, right?" It didn't. I stepped aside to let another guest walk past me, her designer heels clicking across the tiled entryway as the host greeted her by name and gestured toward the champagne table. "I should have worn a name tag," I murmured. Evelyn didn't answer. She was already walking away. I stood for another minute, gripping my clutch like it could anchor me to a reality where this wasn't happening, where I hadn't paid for the deposit on the dress Tessa was wearing right now, where I hadn't signed the lease on the venue they were all about to toast, where I wasn't invisible on purpose. The restaurant manager cleared his throat softly behind me. I got the message. I turned toward the glass exit doors just in time to see Tessa sweeping across the room like the second coming of bridal perfection. Her satin dress shimmered under the chandelier, her hair pinned in the kind of messy updo that only came with a stylist and a $600 trial. She waved to someone near the back table, laughed. Then, like a bird sensing a tremor in the air, her eyes caught mine. For a fraction of a second, her face shifted, just the faintest flicker of recognition. And then she looked away, deliberately, smoothly, like I was a server holding an empty tray. I didn't move, didn't breathe. Tessa walked past me 5 minutes later, heading toward the back patio. She didn't slow, didn't pause, just whispered as she passed, "Let's not make this a thing, okay?" I watched her back until the door swung shut behind her. And then I did what I've always done. I walked out quietly. Outside, the air was thick with summer dusk and exhaust fumes. I found my car, slid into the driver's seat, and rested my forehead against the wheel. The thing about being erased is, it doesn't come all at once. It's paper cuts, silent omissions, subtle jokes no one challenges. A missing name here, a missing chair there. Until suddenly you're not a person anymore. You're a placeholder, a purse, a memory they rewrite in real time. My phone buzzed against my lap. A text from Daniel, my lawyer. Reminder, Lakehurst venue contract still pending. You're the listed owner. Need direction ASAP. If I had $1 for every time they asked for help and forgot to write down my name, I'd still have less than what I gave them. The sun hadn't fully risen over Brooklyn Heights, but the light slipping through my blinds had that sharp, unmerciful edge, like it knew I didn't sleep. My apartment was too quiet, too neat, the kind of stillness that followed humiliation like a loyal dog. I stood barefoot at the dining table, hands hovering over a familiar manila folder labeled simply Lakehurst. Inside, my paper trail, my proof, my name in every line they didn't read. It wasn't spite that pulled me to sit. It was clarity. A lifetime of shrinking made room for a single morning of precision. I flipped through the printed invoices. Deposit, $10,000. Additional payments, $8,500 here, $3,700 there. Final balance, $42,500. My bank stamp, my wire ID, my initials. Then the clause. All events held on Lakehurst property must obtain written consent from the registered contract holder for any public or promotional use. Me. That was me. Not Evelyn. Not Tessa. Not the event planner they kept forwarding final decisions to. My phone buzzed. A text from Evelyn. No, hi. No preamble. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Tessa deserves peace. I didn't respond. I read it again, then placed the phone face down beside the folder. There was a rhythm to this kind of gaslight, the kind where guilt arrives dressed like love. I'd seen it before, heard it 5 years ago when Evelyn called the night before Tessa's engagement dinner. It'll just overwhelm her, Naomi. You know how she is around attention. You've always had such presence. Maybe just sit this one out. As if being asked not to attend your sister's celebration was an act of compassion. I opened another envelope. Floral invoice. $4,200. Paid on my corporate card. Gown fitting. $3,600. Charged to my personal account. Bachelorette retreat. $6,800. Santa Fe. Labeled as Naomi Hale travel sponsorship. I didn't remember approving any of that. But then again, they never asked. I clicked open my laptop and scrolled through flagged emails. One from Mia Carter, events coordinator, caught my eye. Subject line, urgent, contract holder approval needed. The body was short. Hi, Naomi. We're behind on timelines. Can we get your signature on the Lakehurst logistics sheet as soon as possible? Tessa mentioned you're the point of contact. Thanks. Mia, I exhaled. So even the planner knew. I minimized the email and opened a blank document. My fingers hovered over the keyboard for a second before typing, slow and deliberate. As of this morning, no consent is given for use of Lakehurst grounds for any event bearing the Hale name. Naomi Hale. I copied it into an email and sent it to Mia. Then I CC'd Daniel. Then I sat back and let the silence ring in my ears. Not even 5 minutes passed before another notification lit up my screen. A receipt. One I hadn't seen before. Tessa had labeled it DJ, deposit. The name underneath the payment line. Andrew Nolan. Andrew. My Andrew. Well, he used to be. I stared at the screen like it might soften with time. It didn't. Just cold pixels confirming that the man who once told me I made him feel seen would be providing the music for my erasure. The memory was small, fast, like a static shock. Tessa and Andrew laughing at a bar, a week before he broke it off. The way Evelyn said, "You two are never really aligned, sweetie. You're more reserved. He needs sparkle." I closed the invoice, then the browser, then the folder. I reached for my phone not to call anyone, but to book a flight. Akureyri, northern Iceland, far enough to be irrelevant, cold enough to match the numb. I selected a one-way ticket. No upgrades, no seat preference. Just gone. When the confirmation email came through, I tossed my phone onto the unmade bed. The screen lit up once more, blinking. Flight confirmed. No one follows you to Iceland. That's the point. The air in Akureyri tasted like distance, like all the things I didn't have to explain anymore. I stood on a ridge just beyond the glacier's edge, boots grinding into hard-packed snow, breath hanging in the air like something suspended between decision and release. Silence like this doesn't exist in New York. It has weight here. It listens back. When I was 8, I once told Tessa that if I ever disappeared, I'd go somewhere quiet enough to hear myself think. She laughed and said she'd follow just to make sure I didn't get bored. She never had to. I'd hiked for an hour, away from the hostel, past the last trail marker. No itinerary, no reception. Just white against blue against nothing. For the first time in days, I could breathe all the way down. When I returned to my room, the floor creaked like an old warning. The bed was twin-sized, the window latch rusted, the heater loud enough to mimic a heartbeat. And yet, it felt more mine than anything I'd been invited into lately. I sat on the edge of the bed and turned on my phone. Notifications flooded in like a dam breaking. 32 unread messages. Evelyn, 3 missed calls. Tessa, a barrage of texts in escalating tone, rising from concern to accusation. Then a post on her social media. Funny how some people only care about their name when they're not the one being celebrated. The comments were predictable. Sympathy cloaked in ignorance. Hearts, fire emojis. One said, "You deserve your big day, queen." Don't let bitter energy ruin it. I closed the app. Then the anonymous email arrived. Subject: Saw this. Thought you should know. From an unlisted address. The signature: Mia. There was an attachment. I hesitated only a second before opening it. An internal document. Hale wedding budget, working draft. Every line item listed under primary contributor: Naomi Hale, catering, rentals, DJ floral design, property rental, all marked paid in green. No line stating who I was, no acknowledgement, just numbers and categories and absence. My name had become a funding source and a footnote simultaneously. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I opened LinkedIn. A blank post stared back at me. What happens when the silent partner stops paying? I let the question breathe, then attached 3 slides. Slide 1. A cropped PDF of the Lakehurst contract with my name highlighted. Slide 2. A tidy table of final payments, labeled and timestamped. Slide 3. A screenshot of the original $42,500 wire transfer from my account with a blue arrow pointing to Event Hale Wedding. I didn't add hashtags. I didn't tag anyone. I hit publish. Then I locked my phone and placed it face down on the windowsill. I watched snow drift sideways in the streetlight, soft and unbothered. An hour later, the phone vibrated once. Then again. I ignored it. It wasn't until the 3rd buzz, longer this time, that I picked it up. Email from Caitlin Reed, Senior Features Editor, Bridal Weekly Magazine. Ms. Hale, we'd love to confirm your side of the story. Can you talk? I didn't send it to hurt them. I sent it so they'd stop pretending I never existed. The message had been out in the world for less than 48 hours. I hadn't promoted it, hadn't responded to comments, hadn't even logged back in. But apparently, it didn't matter. The first ping came from a niche startup finance blog. Then another. A smaller podcast picked it up, analyzing the ghost investment angle. By mid-afternoon, Wedding Wire had posted a sidebar article titled Venue Wars, the bride's sister who funded the whole thing. I was still in Iceland, sitting in the common room of the hostel, sipping lukewarm tea, a blanket wrapped around my knees. Outside, the wind howled across the fjord. Inside, I scrolled silently as my inbox filled with notifications from strangers who thought I was brave, petty, powerful, vindictive, elegant, toxic, depending on their level of projection. Then Mia wrote again. This time, it wasn't anonymous. The subject line was bolder. You deserve the truth. The attachment was a scanned memo. An internal Hale family document, unsigned but clearly formatted for Evelyn's eyes. The header read, Event Strategy Outline. Press plus donor relations. I read every line. It confirmed everything. The wedding's budget was listed under a family development grant, with the funding source labeled NH Holdings, a shell name I had created for quiet investments years ago. No mention of Naomi. Just the initials they used when they wanted to cash the check but not credit the name. A few lines down. Ensure press avoids linking financial aspects to sister. Keep spotlight aligned with bride's foundation narrative. It felt less like betrayal, more like an autopsy. Cold, methodical, practiced. Before I could close the tab, another notification appeared. Email from Caitlin Reed, Bridal View magazine. Polite, professional, intrusive in that way journalists master. Hi, Naomi. We're covering the Lakehurst wedding developments and would love to offer you space to respond. Just a few quotes if you're willing. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I walked outside. The wind caught at my coat like it wanted to push me back to Brooklyn. But I stayed. I watched the distant white-capped peaks and reminded myself why I left. Back inside, I typed a short reply. I don't believe in spectacle, but I do believe in receipts. Naomi Hale. An hour later, the article dropped. The ghost donor, Naomi Hale's invisible sponsorship of the wedding, that erased her 3 side-by-side images, headlined the piece. A cropped venue contract with my name circled in red, a line-item budget spreadsheet showing my full payment, and a silent screenshot of Evelyn Hale at a charity gala, standing next to a sign that read, "Funded in part by the Hale Foundation." The article was clean. No insults, just facts. And that's what made it brutal. The comments were immediate and different this time. How do you forget the person who made the party happen? This is why women keep receipts. She's not petty, she's precise. Back in New York, the Hale house scrambled. I knew it without needing cameras. Evelyn sent Greg an email. I got a forwarded copy later, from her iCloud account. Time-stamped 2 minutes after the article went live. You need to fix this. Talk to her. Explain the miscommunication. Greg's reply came in 5 words. We used her. It's reckoning. That was the first time I'd seen him say anything that resembled truth. At 6:42 p.m. Iceland time, a final ping. Statement from Sela Impact Fund, official sponsor of the Hale Women's Initiative. We are pausing our partnership due to ethical misrepresentation regarding financial structures and event sponsorship. I didn't smile. That wasn't what this was for. I just closed my laptop. Apparently, I sabotaged the wedding by not pretending it was mine too. I read the sentence 3 times on Tessa's Instagram post, framed beneath a filtered photo of a half-built floral arch. The comments flooded in, rabid and split. Some offered condolences. People will always try to steal your light. Others weren't so generous. Maybe credit the one who bankrolled the arch? From my corner of a co-working cafe in Akureyri, the distance between us had never felt shorter. My phone had vibrated nonstop for 2 days. Evelyn called first. Then again. Then again. She left a voice memo that started sweet and slid, like her best lies often did, into threat-shaped pleas. Naomi, sweetheart, we're all hurting. Come home. We'll fix this together. You know how to clean things up. We'll tell people you've always been behind the scenes, that this was your way of protecting Tessa. You can still speak at the reception, darling. Don't let this go too far. She sounded breathless by the end, as if the house was on fire and I was hoarding the water. I didn't answer. Instead, I walked to the back terrace of the cafe and watched a child chase their scarf across the windswept street. Greg emailed me only once. No greeting, no sign-off, just a subject line. I'm sorry I didn't stop it. The unraveling began that morning. Lakehurst venue sent a final notice to Evelyn. Per contractual agreement, failure to provide written consent from Naomi Hale voids all bookings and sponsorship privileges. Event scheduled for July 1st is hereby canceled. The document leaked 2 hours later. Not by me. By then, the press was no longer kind. An online thread compiled receipts, venue, planner emails, deposits, each one tied to my name. A post titled, "The Sister Who Was Erased, and then erased the wedding trended on Twitter for a full hour. Tessa tried to spin it. Another caption: "You try your best to build something meaningful, and then someone who can't stand not being in the center tears it down." The comments turned fast. "Girl, she built the center. All she did was stop paying. That's not sabotage, that's budgeting." Then it hit. The audio clip. Evelyn's voice, crisp and undeniable, recorded mid-conversation with a wedding staffer. "Naomi doesn't matter. She's just the purse. She knows that. She always has." It was short. 22 seconds, but it moved like a match through dry grass. Sponsors dropped out one by one. The wine distributor, the private label cake company. Even the nonprofit Tessa had founded posted a vague values reassessment message. Greg, it turned out, had told them not to spin. "Let it collapse," he told Evelyn in a call that someone else heard. "It's what we built, not what Naomi destroyed." By nightfall, the wedding was over. No public statement, no big reveal. Just a quiet deconstruction of chairs and contracts and assumptions. I didn't gloat. There was nothing joyful about watching the machine seize, but I didn't grieve either. The message arrived just after dinner, from a women's development foundation I hadn't heard of before. Short, direct. "We saw your recent work in Iceland. We'd like to support your community development initiative. Can we talk?" They didn't invite me to the wedding, but I was on every invoice that built it. The Reykjavik air felt lighter than I remembered. Even with the steady wind off the bay and the cloud-thick sky, the light was clean, like a blank sheet just before the first word. Inside the community center, the smell of fresh paint mingled with cardamom pastries and the low hum of women setting up folding chairs. It was warm in the way things are when they're built slowly, with care. A white vinyl banner hung behind the stage. Invisible hands. A quiet fund for loud impact. We didn't have sponsors or florists or crystal glassware. We had mismatched mugs, laminated name tags, and 4 extension cords that powered everything from the coffee urn to the slideshow projector. And it was perfect. I had spent the past 3 weeks putting this together. No press releases, no public relations firm. Just a growing network of women in Reykjavik and Akureyri who'd reached out after the story spread. Not because they were scandalized, but because they recognized something of themselves in the outline of my name. It was never about going viral. It was about being seen, finally, without shouting. The guest list was small, 28 people, local founders, teachers, single mothers, quiet powerhouses. One of them, Agnes, a retired lawyer with steel-colored hair, had once been on the Hale wedding guest list. I recognized her name from an RSVP chart Mia had emailed me months ago. "I almost flew in for it," she told me, handing me a folded donation envelope. Then I saw what unfolded. I figured this flight was better. She winked. I smiled. No drama, just realignment. Mid-morning, someone handed me an envelope with no return address. Inside was a note typed and unsigned. I won't defend what I did. But I kept a photo of you and Tessa since 1997. I hope to return it someday. Evelyn, of course. No apology. Just memory weaponized as olive branch. I folded the note once, then again, and placed it inside the drawer of the community center's small front office. I didn't throw it away. I just didn't answer. Some things deserve silence. Not out of cruelty, but completion. Andrew never wrote, never called, never liked a single post. And I realized I didn't need him to. When the keynote began, I stood in front of the modest crowd with no script. Just a few notes in the corner of my folder and the steady knowledge that this was mine. Not by inheritance, not by invitation, but by intention. Halfway through, a girl in the front row raised her hand. She couldn't have been more than 10, her dark hair tucked into a handmade wool beanie. "Did you used to be famous?" she asked, wide-eyed like she'd just solved a mystery. I laughed. "Not exactly. I just paid for a lot of things without being seen." The room chuckled softly, a ripple of recognition. As I closed the session, I looked at the women seated before me, some leaning forward, some holding their mugs like shields, some blinking back something they didn't yet have language for. I took a breath. Legacy isn't recognizable. It's resilient. And today, we build it together. They silenced her with seating charts, erased her with expense reports, and smiled while doing it. But the silence cracked when she chose to speak not with rage, but with records. What they dismissed as background support was, in truth, the foundation of everything they built. Justice didn't arrive with noise. It arrived on paper, undeniable and irreversible. Like the final chord of a long-forgotten melody, truth may come late, but when it plays, everyone listens. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more stories where justice speaks, even in a whisper.